Hey guys, welcome back to Legendary Tabletop. I'm Greg, your host, and last week we made an epic fort for the game of Mordheim. Now, in just a few weeks, I'm going to be participating in my first ever all-day Mordheim tournament. Now, I've played in some short games before, but never have I ever participated in an event of this magnitude. So we're building a couple cool buildings in order to make this event unforgettable. And last week we built an epic fort. You can see that video here and in the link below. And this week we're going to make a gatehouse to go with the fort and create some cool lines of sight for our game, some ladders and elevation in order to make some platform type situations and to make our game a little bit more interesting. So without further ado, please hit the like, please hit the subscribe, and let's get into the build.
All right, welcome to Voiceover Land, and browsing my local Dollar Tree, I found these little doll houses, and I thought that might make a nice foundation. Some solid plastic here with some little bits and bobs and things. So aside from the outrageous colors, I think with a little modification we can make this appear to be of medieval design with some coffee stir sticks and foam, etc. We can add some pieces to cover some of the stuff that doesn't look like it should. And so now I'm grabbing some of this XPS insulation foam, pink insulation foam that you can get at some of your local hardware, construction store, home goods store. And I'm using some of the measurements on my mat here to create a square and some even geometric spacing here. And I'm going to create some archways for the gatehouse to sort of match the aesthetic of the fort that we built last week. And I just have this little paint bottle that I'm going to use to cheat and create a circle. And the circles are a little bit off, but as I'm cutting out these pieces, I'm going to alter my course and correct the mistake of the pen. If you want it to be very exact, you could use one of those, gosh, I can't think of the name of it. You know what I'm talking about. Anyways, so, or you can tie a string, that sort of thing. You can tie a string to a marker. That's a great way to get a circle. And I have these two pieces here, and I've held those up against the fort that we made last week to make sure that those bridge elements match. There's going to be like this ruined bridge portion that looks like it's been knocked down, but you can place the buildings close to each other so that characters can still leap and jump, and you can create some cool epic scenarios. And then we're taking a big solid piece here and putting that over the top here, just using some hot glue to create the structure of our gatehouse. And now I'm cutting some strips here that I'm going to use to hot glue underneath here on the inside in order to create just some stability. And the hot glue, the foam, can kind of warp a little bit, glue in sort of a weird way, and this will also make sure that everything is sort of balanced and that the gatehouse stands and isn't wobbly, because that would be no fun. We don't want all our little guys falling off. So here are those spaces, and I'm going to use those spaces later too to stick some LED tea lights in to make the windows glow. And now I'm working on some parapets here, and I'm just alternating the depth of the parapets on a long strip here of foam to create some interesting eye-catching design. And this is the same aesthetic that we have for the fort that we made last week, so just copying the design and using a little bit of this aluminum foil ball to create some texture before I tear out these spaces here in the parapets, and not cutting them all the way. I wanted to like kind of tear these out gently so that there are some imperfections. I think the imperfections help to make it appear a bit more realistic, and as well as giving off the aesthetic of course, a ruined building. And then now we're going to work on this dollhouse, my $1 dollhouse. And I've seen people before on the tube here take two of these and glue them back to back and do this and make little houses for your wargaming table. And I've done that as well, but I feel like that idea is played out. So this is kind of nice to make the gatehouse, the half of it where it's been knocked down, with 2 levels here so that models can jump up and down. And taking just some coffee stir sticks and hot glued them on the inside to kind of make this dollhouse a little bit less cute. And now I'm going in with some clippers, and I'm taking off some of the plastic stuff that is just obviously part of the toy, the clips and little pieces that are sticking out, and then I'm gonna go back and cover a lot of those pieces with little foam and more coffee stir sticks, framing the windows, hiding those little imperfections in the clips and the plastic, and just kind of making this dollhouse less dollhousey, and just going through the details. And then I'm going to add a little platform here for the gatehouse, and where maybe like the gatehouse master comes out and asks you why you're coming over here, that sort of thing. Taking out to the garage, I'm going to just spray paint this dollhouse brown, even though I haven't painted the rest of the other stuff yet. It's just the colors just bother me. Can't look at these cute colors, too masculine. Must dull down the colors. But yeah, so just unifying this, and also the spray paint takes a little bit of time to dry, so that's partially the reason, and that will speed up the process. And then as I leave that to dry, I'm gonna go back and work on some of the foam elements. So we come back, and I put some planks on the bottom and made sort of a wooden structure, and then also glued in the bottom here some metal screws, some heavy screws here from a piece of furniture that I threw out, but kept the screws, and just to weigh that down, because that plastic gatehouse is way heavier than the foam, and it just was oblong. You could just whisper and the thing would fall over. And I'm slowly adding more of that wood structure. I've added these little cracked bridge portions, some of the wall portions where I've just cut sort of a diagonal piece, and then pinched some of the edges off to make it look as if it's been wrecked. And then I'm used a much larger piece with the same width to create this sort of little tower piece, and that's going to have some platforms in it and some ladders to be able to climb up to the top. And it's coming together. And now I'm going to make the little arrow slits, and I've seen these on a couple different like 3D printed buildings and some historical photos, and they're usually like this little easy square. Sometimes they're wood. We're gonna make them stone, so they just kind of seem a little bit cooler, and then I'm just gonna press out that little centerpiece. But since these pieces are kind of so tiny, I did use the marker as a guide before to make sure that I cut them correctly, and then just using my thumb to kind of gently press that piece outside the foam. And we're going to make a bunch of these, as well as some that have been cracked and ruined, to put onto the piece here. And then I also go back and cut a little hole all the way through them so little guys can peek through. We can put LED lights in there at some point on the bottom, and we have our little arrow slits for the gatehouse, and it's starting to look more and more like a gatehouse. And I really like this little ruined tower piece with the parapet and the two little eyes on there. I mean, it's looking a little Minecrafty right now, but we'll get it to where we want it to get it. We'll get it to where we want it to be. And putting some planks here on the back, we're gonna make a little portion where models can climb up and get into the gatehouse. And then adding the platform here, and then this little plastic piece from Wendy's Wednesday promotional spoon material. And if you saw last week, you heard the story about going to Wendy's and finding these Mordheim spoons. And I believe that promotion is over. Wendy's is the shit. And I have this Dungeons and Lasers little gargoyle boy, and we're gonna glue this to that tower, and we're gonna leave one of them wrecked, as if it was knocked away in the ruins. And then a little trick here, I usually don't do these individual bricks, but I did these individual bricks this time, and I found that if I just go quickly over them with a lighter, that they kind of firm up and also shape up, and it's a little bit easier than the foam. Less safe, obviously, because you're breathing the toxic fumes, so don't do what I do. Do this ventilation if you do burn the foam. But I think it looks nice. And then now I'm just turn off the lights in here and checking out how the LEDs are going to look, and I think that's going to look very nice. You can see them kind of poking through the windows and through the bottom. And this gatehouse can be used, not only for Mordheim. This would make a great Dungeons and Dragons encounter. And then on to the details with the ballpoint pen. Now, a lot of times I've used in the past the hot wire tool, and I found that the hot wire tool is good for like larger cuts, bigger things, maybe like trees or more organic caves, mountainside, hillsides, that sort of thing. But doing these bricks, I think it can be a little bit too strong, and to get the correct scale detail, the ballpoint pen is the best way to go. Now, yes, it's tedious, it takes a while. Doing a piece like this takes several hours to do this. A lot of times I gotta stretch the hand, take a break. The pieces that we did last week, the forts, just two large pieces with all the bricks, took two days to get that. So, but I find it relaxing, so put on a podcast, put on some music, and just start bricking away. And just, you kind of gently rub your pen, not too much pressure, or else you'll kind of gouge the foam out. You want to gently add detail. In the past, I have done bricks by using parallel lines and filling in the parallel lines directionally for, I guess, ease of thought process. But I think that after some experience with terrain building, drawing the bricks individually makes them appear much more organic and much more realistic, as you can kind of see this pattern that I've sped up here on the screen. It's more difficult, but the end result, I think, is a better life lesson. Sometimes the harder way is the better way, and the easier way is not. And just slowly using the pen, gently, and meditating and adding these little bricks. And then the bricks on the walkway here too, I kind of go with a more cobblestone type style, where the bricks on the outside of the walls, I go for a more square vibe to kind of have a little bit of a different variance going on, and I feel like it works. We did it with the fort and it looks great, and we filled in all this texture here and it's starting to look like something. You can kind of tell how it's gonna look, and very exciting to move forward. And now I'm going to grab some caulking, some cheap caulking here, and you'll find that when you bring your foam pieces to the game store or to your friends' houses, or even just setting them up and putting away, you will inevitably chip the foam. And though the foam is easy to sculpt and create with, it can be not as sturdy as we'd like. So I found that adding caulking to the entire foam structure will increase the durability immensely. And I use undiluted caulking to fill gaps like you would with any other sort of gap filler, and then I thin out more of the caulking and spread it over all of the surfaces, not too thick so I don't obscure detail, but thin enough to create a sort of layer that if I wanted to, I could spray paint this afterwards and I wouldn't melt any of the foam. And you let this cure for a day and you get a very solid, durable piece. And I've only been doing this recently, so a lot of my pieces still take a heck of a beating, but moving forward, I'm definitely going to be doing this with my foam builds. And because I still love the ease of carving and creating and cutting and constructing with this type of foam. And we let it cure, and in about 24 hours we have a really solid piece that is ready to be painted. Alright, now I'm grabbing some house paint. Find that house paint you can buy in larger quantities, and there are solvents and things in there that are much more durable than that hobby paint. And if you're on a budget, hobby paint works just fine. But I like this stuff. I go to the hardware store, look in the back for the return section. In the paint section, there always is samples and things that have been returned, and they are quite inexpensive. And I found some pretty nice paints over there that I've used even in my home for redoing cabinets and things like that. So I add a little bit of glue, PVA glue to this, and some varnish. And this is going to just unify everything and give us a base to paint on. And we let this dry, and this is a great moment when the pink of the foam and everything gets erased and you can kind of really see what this is going to be. And it solidifies all of the seals and solidifies all that everything in the foam and makes it more durable.
Hey guys, I wanted to take a quick second and talk about something very exciting coming to the world of Legendary Tabletop. Now, you all know this channel as a place where we talk about tabletop games, things that are related to fantasy and sci-fi, Dungeons and Dragons, Mordheim, Warhammer, that sort of thing, one-page rules, that sort of thing. But I have also been a big fan of science fiction my whole life. And a few years back, I actually started to work on my own science fiction IP, or intellectual property, as you might have heard. And I wrote 2 different novels to start to explore the lore of this world that I wanted to create and eventually turn into a really cool tabletop war game with its own miniatures, its own terrain, its own special rules and rule books, that sort of thing. But I thought that getting the lore really worked out before all this goes forward and we start working on videos related to that game here on the channel, that the lore is the most important thing. So we have these 2 novels that I have written, and the first one, Apex Outsider Worlds, and it has a sequel, book 2, so to speak, Apex Exodus, and this is a science fiction epic space fantasy novel that is inspired by things like Dune, Hyperion, Star Wars, Games of Thrones, and of course inspired by a lifetime of playing Warhammer, Warhammer 40k, Mordheim, and the like. So I will leave a link below to Amazon, where you can buy both paperback and Kindle versions of these books. And it's a great way to support me and support the channel. And it's very exciting for me to finally put it out there. So thanks for watching my little spiel, and back to the video.
Okay, so we are taking some of these coffee stir sticks and some toothpicks, and we are gluing them together with just some tacky glue in order to create some ladders for our models to travel up and down the gatehouse, and also a little sort of balcony here for this front door of the gatehouse. And I'm gonna use a scrap piece of a coffee stir stick here, and I'm just gonna add some of that tacky glue to the spots where I'm gonna add that on the edge. And I find that the tacky glue is really nice for the wood elements like this, these light pieces that you just sort of add to your builds. It takes a little bit longer, but there is sort of a viscosity to it, and you can, and a gel, like it's like a gelness to it, so you can stick pieces and it will kind of hold the pieces up while they dry, where PVA glue can kind of be a little bit thinner, and wood glue too, I find sometimes, and the tacky glue just has that nice tackiness to it. So tacky glue, send us money, wish us luck. And these toothpicks too, I got from this lovely Asian market in my town here, and they have this nice little like embellishment on them. They have a little detail on the tips of them, and it makes for a nice little fence here. I think we might do some more fences and things, like some scatter trains with that. And the coffee stir sticks, same thing. Let them dry first, and then glue them to the side, and just tacky glue. And if you had a tricky spot that you needed to glue them in, you could use some hot glue. And I forgot before I had primed everything to add some rubble, so now I'm adding some like aquarium stones and sand, etc., to sort of the corners and the sides and places where rubble would fall, and just creating some realism and some story in our Mordheim Gatehouse. And it's really coming together here. And then I'm going to use just my tips of my fingers here after I've dropped the rubble in order to kind of push the stones into the sides here. Just gently kind of poking with my big sweaty fingers here and trying to make everything look like it had fallen in a believable and natural way. And then now we're gonna start painting here. So I'm starting with sort of brushing downward with a sort of mid-tone gray, and not going too heavy so that I can keep some of that black in the detail in the cracks and crevices. And then also by brushing downward, you can sort of recreate the illusion of light. And we are going to come back later and use a wash to darken this down, but initially the colors that we put, we're going to go a little bit harder and heavier and bold. And now I've got some mid-tone browns, and I'm going to start doing the same thing with the gatehouse and creating some different tones of brown and some depth in the wood tone, and making it look a little bit aged but also different than the grays in the stone. And we let that base coat dry, and I'm going to take just a little bit of a lighter tone of brown and also some greens and some reds, and I'm going to start filling in some of the bricks here and just picking out a few individual bricks in small little patterns, and that will kind of make the bricks appear a little bit more believable. Well, so mostly browns and reds, and then I add some diluted green to be sort of mold along the sides of this wrecked building. And then while I was doing that, I noticed that the dollhouse had this like writing on it, and I said, what the heck, how did I not see that? And so now quickly we're going to cover our mistakes here and use tacky glue and some notorious craft tool of the year, craft item of the year, coffee stir sticks, and create a sort of trim here to cover up this writing here. And why did they put it here? I mean, I know it's a Dollar Tree dollar store. It's not, the finest dollhouse in the land, but why did they put that writing there? But anyways, be that as it may, glad we noticed that, because that would have looked weird. And just cut up some little pieces, some little planks here, and just making a little trim, and then I'll let that dry. And thankfully it's super hot, autumn day here in city of Chicago, about 85 degrees Fahrenheit today, so this will dry in just a few minutes here. And but also focusing in on this dollhouse, I'm grateful that I don't have to do any roof tiles, and we're definitely going to go back to that dollar store and grab a few of those to put into the almighty bin of plastic junk that I collect in my notorious dad inventory. So there you have it. And now more tacky glue into the edges here. We're gonna get some flocking going, and the piece is really coming along, almost done. Very exciting to get close to a finished product. And off screen, I'm also kind of putting it next to the fort that we made last week to make sure that all the coloring matches. And this is a homemade sawdust flocking, really easy to make, just sawdust mixed with a little bit of water and acrylic paint. Different colors, you lay it out on some pieces of cardboard in order to dry, and then you can kind of mix different colors together and create different blends. I have like a green kind of, jungle blend. I have like desert blends. This is the fall autumn leaves blend, which is basically just red, brown, orange, different shades in that sort of color spectrum. And because it's sawdust, it really kind of absorbs in the glue and easy to make. And, if you cut a few pieces of wood out there in the garage, you're going to have sort of endless amounts of this stuff. And then last but not least, we're going to use a little bit of a wash here to unify everything and dull it down, make it look dirty and old. And the wash is just basically water, some brown and black ink, some medium, a little bit of PVA glue, and some dishwasher for flow.
All right, friends, and that is the build for the Mordheim Gatehouse, and we've completed our epic fort. And if you haven't already, please hit the like, hit the subscribe, except for you, Randy. Heard what you said. And without further ado, you all know what time it is. We're gonna roll that beautiful bean footage!